Most of the time, people already know exactly what they need to do. The problem isn't lack of knowledge. It's avoidance. Think about it. John says he needs to get his finance in order. But he won't even open his bank statement. It's straight to the trash. He says he needs to get healthy. But he keeps putting off that first walk. John keeps saying that he needs to talk to his business partner because he ran into this tough issue with a client. But guess what? He never makes the call. I'm telling you, John's a nice guy, but he's still got some things to figure out. Because here's what John doesn't realize, and it's true for just about anyone. The thing most avoided is usually the very thing that would move his life forward. I learned early in life that avoidance is a sign. It's like a flashing light, pointing exactly to what needs attention. But instead of seeing it as a signal, most people see it as something to run from. They think that if they don't look at it, maybe it'll go away. But problems don't go away. When ignored, they grow, they multiply. They show up later bigger and harder than before. What you avoid doesn't disappear. It compounds, and here's the irony, the very thing that makes you uncomfortable, the very thing you resist, is usually where the breakthrough lives. If you're avoiding a conversation, that conversation probably holds the key to repairing or strengthening a relationship. If you're avoiding discipline with money, that's exactly where financial freedom is waiting. If you're avoiding the discipline of health, that's where the energy and vitality you want are hiding. The avoidance isn't random, it's a clue. It's life showing you where growth is waiting. Think about it like this: if you walked into a house and saw one room with the door closed, you might feel a little suspicious. What's in the chances are it's the very room that needs cleaning the most. That's how life works. Whatever area you've been avoiding, whatever door you've kept shut, that's probably the area that needs the most attention. And the longer you leave it closed, the worse it gets. So the principle is simple, but not easy. If you're avoiding it, it's probably the answer. If it's uncomfortable, if it feels heavy, if it's the thing you've been putting off, that's the very thing you should move toward. Not away from. Growth doesn't live in the comfortable. Growth lives in the uncomfortable. The answer you need is almost always hidden inside the thing you're most afraid to face. Avoidance is one of the patterns in human behavior. Isn't it something? People know what needs to be done, yet they resist it. They know the conversation that would heal a relationship, but they won't have it. They know the exercise that would strengthen the body, but they don't start it. They know the habit that would transform their finance, but they keep putting it off. It's not ignorance, they already know. It's avoidance. Why do we avoid what we most need? The reasons are many. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of failing, fear of looking foolish, fear of not being enough. Sometimes it's pride. Unwillingness to admit change is needed so comfort zones are protected. Other times it's simple laziness, the preference for easy now, even if it costs dearly later. The mind will come up with 100 reasons to delay the very thing that matters most. Think about procrastination. People will scrub the whole kitchen before sitting down to make one important phone call. They'll reorganize the desk, check the mail, sharpen every pencil, and do 100 little tasks just to avoid the one thing that really needs attention. Why? Because the thing avoid feels heavier, it feels like a weight, and here's the truth. That weight is a clue. The resistance we feel isn't random, it's pointing directly to what matters most. I've seen people avoid health checkups for years because they're afraid of what the doctor might say. And yet what's the result? The problem grows worse in the dark. I've seen people avoid opening their bills convinced that ignoring them will delay the stress. But the stress multiplies in silence. I've seen people avoid learning new skills, telling themselves it's too late or too hard. And soon enough OPPORTUNITIS pass them by. Avoidance never protects us. It only delays the inevitable and usually makes it worse. Now why does avoidance feel so comforting? First, because it offers temporary relief. The moment we turn away from the hard thing we feel lighter, briefly, but it's false relief. Like eating candy. When you need real nutrition, it satisfies in the moment, but leaves you weaker. Afterward, avoidance gives a quick sense of escape. But behind the curtain, the problem is growing larger. What's avoided doesn't vanish. It gathers interest like debt left unpaid. Mr. Chau once told me something I've never forgotten. He said that discomfort is your teacher, and the very things you resist are the things you need most. The discipline you resist is the discipline you need most. The challenge you dread is the one that will grow you the most. Avoidance is the doorway to growth. But most people stop at the door. They never open it. They stand outside waiting for life to get easier. Not realizing that what's behind that door is the very answer they're searching for. Let's make it plain. Avoidance is a form of self-sabotage. Every day you avoid, you build a wall between yourself and your own potential, and the wall doesn't go away. It grows higher, it grows thicker, until one day you realize you've spent years building barriers between where you are and where you want to be, and all the while, the tools to tear that wall down were in your hands. You just refuse to use them, and here's the most sobering part. What you avoid doesn't just affect you, it affects those around you. Avoid a conversation with your spouse, and your marriage drifts quietly toward resentment. Avoid building skills at work, and your company suffers. Avoid discipline in your health, and your children pay the price when you can't keep up with them. Avoidance doesn't stay contained. It leaks into every corner of your life. So the question becomes, if avoidance is so destructive, why do so many people keep living in it? Because it feels safe. The mind convinces you that if you don't face it, you can't fail it, but in truth, that's the greatest failure of all. The failure of never trying, the failure of letting fear decide your future. Avoidance isn't protection, it's surrender. It's handing over the steering wheel of your life to fear while you sit quietly in the passenger seat. The answer is awareness. The first step is recognizing avoidance for what it is. The next time you feel resistance, the next time you catch yourself postponing, hesitating delaying, stop and ask why you're avoiding it. What is the resistance pointing to? More often than not, it's pointing to the very thing that could unlock progress. The weight you feel is a signpost. It's showing you where growth lives. And that's where the shift begins. Instead of treating avoidance like a shield, treat it like a compass, the very thing you resist. MOSD. That's the clue, that's the direction, that's the answer. Avoidance isn't just something that happens by accident, it's a signal pointing you directly to where growth is hiding. I call it the mirror principle. The areas of life you resist the most are almost always the ONES. Holding the answers you need. Think about money. Many avoid dealing with their finances because it feels stressful, so they ignore it. But what's behind that resistance? The very answers to freedom, security, and opportunity, the thing avoided. Facing the numbers, making a plan, is the exact thing that would unlock the future they want. Avoidance is the mirror. The fear and resistance are reflecting back what needs attention most. Or take health, someone avoids, stepping on the scale avoids, the checkup avoids, even thinking about exercise. But what does that reveal? That's exactly the area they need to address. The place they don't want to look is the place that matters most. That mirror of avoidance is showing the doorway. The problem is, instead of seeing avoidance as a compass, most people treat it like a wall. They stop at the very thing pointing them forward. I've seen it in RELATIONSHIPS too. A husband and wife avoid one conversation because it feels uncomfortable, but inside that one conversation is the turning point. The repair, the understanding, the breakthrough. Instead of facing it, they circle around it for months or even years, but the resistance never leaves because it's the mirror. The very thing avoided is the answer. Imagine walking into a house where every room is clean and tidy except one, and that one room has the door closed. You already know that's the messiest room in the house. That's the one hiding the clutter. The dust, the boxes piled high, and isn't that how life works? The door you keep closed, the area you don't want anyone to see, the topic you don't want to discuss. That's the exact area that holds your breakthrough. That's the mirror principle. The closed door isn't random, it's pointing you to where the work needs to be done. Here's what I learned from Mr. Schoffel those years ago. He taught me not to run from the uncomfortable, but to run toward it, because that's where the value is. Every time I resisted something, it was because it carried weight, it mattered. And every time I finally turned toward it, I found growth, opportunity, and freedom. Waiting, the mirror of avoidance, was just reflecting back the truth. Here's the challenge. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid the mirror they don't want to look, because looking means responsibility. Looking means change, so hide. But here's the law of life. What you refuse to face keeps showing up until you do. It's like weeds in a garden. If you don't pull them up, they don't disappear, they spread, they choke out everything else. Avoidance is the same way. Ignore it and it grows. Face it, and you gain control. So here's a better approach. Instead of asking what you wanna do, start asking what you're resisting the most. That question will reveal the answer. If you're resisting the phone call, make the call. If you're resisting exercise, lace up your shoes. If you're resisting facing your finances, open the statement. The resistance is the mirror. It shows you exactly where you need to move. Avoidance is the spotlight pointing at your next step. You don't need to wonder where to start, just look at what you've been avoiding. That's the mirror principle. And once you learn to trust that mirror, you'll stop wasting time circling around the problem and start moving directly into the solution. Responsibility is where the real turning point begins. It's one thing to recognize avoidance and admit you've been dodging something important, but recognition alone change your life. You've got to take responsibility. You've got to look at what you've been avoiding and say, that's mine, that's my task, that's my decision, that's my burden to carry, and my opportunity to grow. Avoidance often walks hand in hand with blame. If you can point the finger at the boss, the economy, or the circumstances, then you don't have to look at yourself. You can hide a little longer. But hiding doesn't solve anything. Blaming doesn't move you forward. It only keeps you trapped. And I know from my own life, when I blamed everything around me, my situation stayed exactly the same. The day things began to change was the day I stopped blaming and started owning. I remember a time when I kept putting off writing a letter I needed to write. Days went by, then weeks. Every day I felt the weight of it. Yet I avoided it. I told myself I was busy and would get to it later. But the truth was, I was afraid to face it. I was afraid of the reaction it might get. That letter became a symbol of my avoidance. And the moment I finally sat down, took responsibility, and wrote it, The burden lifted, the fear disappeared, the situation improved. And I wondered why I had WAITED so long and why I hadn't just taken responsibility sooner. That's the danger of avoidance. FOLSU into BELIVNG. That delay is safer. But it's not. Delay is costly. Every day you avoid, the cost increases. The conversation not had, BCOMES tension. The debt not paid, BCOMES heavier. The discipline not practiced, BCOMES harder. Avoidance is like interest on a loan. IT compounds. Responsibility is the only payment that brings it down. Taking responsibility doesn't mean the task gets easier, it means you get stronger. It means deciding to stop waiting for circumstances to change, and instead CHOOSING to change yourself. It means stopping the wait for someone else to fix IT, and fixing IT yourself. It means no longer waiting for the perfect moment, but CREATING. Responsibility is power. It puts the future back in your hands. I learned this from Mr. SCHO. Years ago. He told me not to wish for fewer problems, but to wish for more skills, not to wish for things to change, but to wish for yourself to change. That's responsibility, and that's the exact opposite of avoidance. Avoidance says to wait until things get easier. Responsibility says to get better so you can handle things as they are. Think of the areas in your life you've been avoiding. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's that one conversation you know you need to have. What would happen if you stopped running and took ownership? What if you claimed responsibility and chose to handle it today? Imagine the weight that would lift, the clarity you would feel. That's the reward of responsibility. It doesn't just change CIRCUMSTNCS, it changes you, and here's the truth: the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. The sooner you act, the lighter it feels. Responsibility shrinks problems because it moves them out of the SHADOWS and into the light. What you face, you can change. What you avoid, you surrender to responsibility. PUTS, you back in command. SO, here's the challenge: stop hiding behind avoidance. Stop BLAMNG, CIRCUMSTNCES. Stop waiting for luck. Take responsibility. Face the hard things, write the letter, make the call, open the bill. Start the project, not tomorrow, not someday, today. B. Cause once you do, everything changes. Responsibility, TURNS, fear, into clarity. Avoidance into progress, excuses into RESULTS. That's the power of responsibility. And once you embrace IT, the next step is learning how to turn that responsibility into daily discipline. Responsibility, OPENS, the door. But discipline is what KEPS, you walking through it every single day. Fear is the root of almost every form of avoidance. That's the truth. People don't avoid because they don't know they avoid, because they're afraid of failing, afraid of rejection, afraid of discomfort, and the longer they avoid, the bigger that fear grows. It's like a shadow: ignore it and it stretches longer. Face IT, and suddenly IT shrinks. Fear has an interesting way of DISGUSING itself. It doesn't always announce itself as fear. Sometimes it shows up as being too busy. Sometimes it hides behind tomorrow. Sometimes it whispers that you're not ready yet, but beneath those excuses, fear is quietly pulling the strings. And if fear, RUNS, the show, it will steal the future one avoided step at a time. Now here's the good news: fear can be defeated, not by talking it away, not by wishing it away, but by action, by discipline. Discipline is the great equalizer. Discipline shrinks fear because discipline puts you in motion. The moment you act, the power of fear WAKNS. The moment you take a step, what looked BGINS to look manageable. Think about someone who avoids exercise because they're INTIMIDATD. By the idea of going to the gym, they put it off day after day imagine how hard it will be. But what happens the day they finally lace up their shoes and take a 10-minute walk? Fear shrinks the next day, the walk feels easier. A week later, it becomes routine, and soon enough what was once terrifying becomes natural. That's the magic of daily discipline. It turns the mountain into a molehill step by step. I remember meeting a business owner years ago who confessed to me that he dreaded making sales calls. He'd avoid them all morning, shuffling papers, answering emails, doing anything except the very thing that could grow his business. One day he told me he finally decided he would make just one call a day. That was his rule, just one, and what happened? One became two. Two became five, and before long his fear of calling disappeared completely. Why? Because daily discipline beat down the fear. He acted before the fear had time to grow. Momentum is the great friend of discipline. The first step is always the hardest. The second is easier. The third, easier still. Discipline creates momentum. And momentum makes the hard things easier. That's why daily action matters so much. It's not about doing something massive, it's about doing something consistent. Because consistency builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Fear when avoidedgrows. Fear when faced with discipline shrinks. That's the law, and every time you exercise that law you build a little more strength, a little more confidence, a little more courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of fear, and when that decision is backed with daily discipline, you become unstoppable. So, here's the shift: stop waiting to feel ready. You'll never feel completely ready. Stop waiting for the fear to disappear. It won't. The only way fear disappears is by moving toward it. With action, build the habit of daily discipline. Do the very thing you've been avoiding, even in a small way, every single day. And soon what once terrified you will feel like second nature. That's how you trade fear for progress. That's how you turn avoidance into achievement. Daily discipline is the bridge. And once you cross that bridge, you're ready for something greater, not just facing fears here and there, but building an entire life beyond avoidance. A life rooted in courage, effectiveness, and freedom. There comes a point where facing the things you've avoided becomes more than isolated acts. It becomes a way of life. That's when you start living beyond avoidance. That's when you stop circling around the same problems year after year, and finally begin building something lasting. I've watched people live two very different lives. One life is built on avoidance. Every difficult choice, postponed, every uncomfortable conversation left unsaid, every habit ignored. And what does that life look like? It looks heavy. It looks filled with regret. The bills pile, health dclines, opportunities, pass by relations weaken. And when they look back they say, if only I had acted sooner, if only I had faced what I was avoiding. That's the tragedy of avoidance. It steals your future, quietly, one day at a time. But I've also seen another life, the life built on courage, responsibility, and discipline. It's not that these people feel less fear. It's not that their challenges are smaller. The difference is they face what they'd rather avoid. They walk straight into the uncomfortable. They deal with the weeds when they're small, instead of waiting until the garden is overrun, and the result is freedom. Growth. They live lighter because they refuse to carry the weight of avoidance. Picture a garden for years, someone avoids weeding it. They keep the gate closed, telling themselves they'll get to it someday, but weeds don't wait. They spread. They choke out everything else, and eventually, the whole garden is a tangle of thorns. Now picture another person who walks into that same garden every day, pulls a few weeds, keeps the soil clear, Which garden would you rather live in? That's the choice: avoidance or courage. A tangled life or a fruitful one. Or think about the house with closed doors. Every room looks fine except one. The one you never open. Behind that door is clutter, dust, things left undone. You avoid it because it feels overwhelming, but it's always there in the back of your mind. What would happen if you simply opened the door, faced the mess, and cleaned it? You'd have peace, you'd have freedom, you'd have nothing left to hide. That's what living beyond avoidance looks like: every door open, every part of your life in the light. Living beyond avoidance doesn't mean you'll never feel resistance. Every new level of growth brings new fears. But it does mean you've built a pattern, you've trained yourself to see avoidance for what it is. A clue, not a wall, it points the way forward. And because you've paired responsibility with discipline, you've built the courage to step toward it every time. That pattern of action becomes your new normal, and here's the beauty: once you live this way, confidence becomes your companion. You begin to trust yourself. You know that no matter what comes up, you'll face it, you won't hide, you won't delay, you avoid, you'll deal with it. And that trust in yourself creates peace of mind, because peace doesn't come from avoiding problems. Peace comes from knowing you can handle them. This is how balance is built. In health, you stop avoiding the mirror and you take care of your body. In wealth, you stop avoiding the numbers and you make a plan. In relationships, you stop avoiding honest. Why? And you have the conversations that matter. In learning, you stop avoiding discipline and you open the book, take the notes. Ask the questions. Every area of life has its weeds, its closed doors, its avoided tasks. But once you face them, those same areas become your strength. And here's the urgency: avoidance has a cost. And the cost grows with time. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. The weeds spread, the door gets heavier. The burden grows, but action has a reward, and the reward comes immediately. The moment you take responsibility, the moment you act with discipline, you feel lighter, you feel stronger. You feel free. That's the gift of facing what you avoid. So now the question is, what kind of life? Do you want a life of delay, clutter, regret, or a life of courage, clarity, and fulfillment? You already know the answer. It's the thing you've been avoiding. That's the answer, that's the direction, that's the key to the future you want. And living beyond avoidance simply means this: whatever you resist, you face. Whatever you fear, you act on. Whatever you've been delaying, you deal with today. And by doing that, day after day, you build a life of freedom and growth. Avoidance has a way of convincing us that we have time, that we'll deal with it tomorrow. Face it later, get to it when we're ready. But the truth is, tomorrow becomes next week. And next week becomes next year, and before long a lifetime has slipped away. Avoidance doesn't just steal opportunities. It steals time, and time is the one thing you never get back. The question now is simple: what are you avoiding? Because you already know. It might be a decision, it might be a conversation, it might be a habit you've been putting off. Whatever it is, write it down, face it, don't let another day slip by while you circle around it, because the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. And the sooner you face it, the freer you'll feel. Here's the challenge I want to leave you with tonight: make a list of the things you've been avoiding. Be honest, don't hold back, write them down, big or small. And then tomorrow, take one step, just one: call the person. Open the envelope, go for the walk, write the first sentence, take the first step. Because once you start, you'll feel momentum building. And that momentum is what changes everything. Life doesn't get better by avoiding what's hard. It gets better when you face it. It gets better when you trade avoidance for responsibility, fear for discipline, and hesitation for action. Because On the other side of avoidance is growth. On the other side of fear is freedom. And on the other side of the very thing you've been, RSSTING, is the life you've been, HOPING for, so the principle stands clear. If you're avoiding it, it's probably the answer, and the sooner you face it, the sooner your life begins to change, not someday, not eventually. Today, because today is all you really have, and today is enough to take the first step.